You're listening to the Brooklyn, USA podcast, an occasional audio love letter from Brooklyn to the world. Each episode of our show rounds a different corner of life in Brooklyn and delivers stories, sounds, and scenery from the people and places that make it home. And until the light changes, we'll be waiting at the intersection of infirmary and infrastructure on a corner we've been calling 1920. Today it's April 17th, and tomorrow there'll be sun. It seems like things are getting better, and things are getting worse. New York's COVID death count is apparently leveling off, but may be quietly miscounting those who die at home or of unrelated illnesses that go fatally untreated by its overburdened system. State leaders are banding together to protect and prepare us for what's next, but nothing can stop the bodies from piling up and clogging the COVID corridor. The American president assigned his name to checks that were sent out among direct deposits of relief, but is apparently trying to kill every American he thinks won't vote for him. And in a move so disappointingly aligned with every other one he's made, for his inaction and dishonesty, he's scapegoating the world. And if defunding and interrogating the World Health Organization in the apex of a global health crisis isn't harmful enough, misrepresenting the response and current state of other countries surely is. So this week, we're seeing the world the way it sees itself. There was a lot of globe to trot on this one, so this journey's in two parts. Make sure to stick around for part 2 of the episode after the credits roll on this one. In part 1, we change the dial and tune into the radio revolution. Then, we beat the odds and get a glimpse at recovery. Next, we read between the lines of one of history's great loves. Then, we leave the country in search of other care. Next, we see if social distancing sounds the same to everyone. Then we check our messages, and finally, we check the weather. In part 2, we catch up with our friends, some old, some new, some borrowed from the crew, to hear how things are going around the globe and get some worldly advice on staying safe and sane. There comes a time when the world must come together as one. For us, that time is now. After all, we are the world, in Brooklyn, USA. Bringing solidarity, love, music, and expression to a world in isolation is as painfully difficult as it is absolutely necessary. And in the center of one of the world's largest lockdowns, amidst a nation of political unrest and religious persecution, a group of friends, artists, and activists came together to do just that. Here's Radio Quarantine Kolkata.
বন্ধুকে পড়শিকে ছুঁতে পারছি না, বড়দের মেলামেশা বন্ধ, ছোটদের স্কুল খেলাধুলা বন্ধ, মন খারাপ, বিষণ্ণতা। আপনারা শুনছেন রেডিও কোয়ারেন্টাইন কলকাতা। একাকী থেকো না অসময়ে।
I'm Kasturi Basu. I'm one of the co-founders of this Radio Quarantine Kolkata.
I am Darshana. I am also one of the co-founders of Radio Quarantine. Radio Quarantine is a 24/7 web-based radio channel based out of Kolkata.
This project, it began when the lockdown actually began in our city and also in our country. This is a community radio project, and 6 to 10 of us are in this. Some are more active than the others. I should say that none of us here in the team had any notions about how to run a community radio on the internet. So we actually learnt on the go. It began as a sort of, the idea was like, if you ask me to say it in one line, it was to bring social solidarity to social isolation. We really don't like the term social distancing. It doesn't mean anything. We should say physical distancing, right? Because more of social solidarity is needed at this time. It's about people caring for each other and for the community. Otherwise, we can't really make through this crisis.
The other thing, of course, that's been going on in the country right now is that we've been in the middle of a number of protests across a range of issues, but primarily to do with the question of citizenship.
They gathered across the capital and from other states in India. Their message loud and clear: the Citizen Amendment Act, or the CAA as it's known, has to go.
India has passed a new law that will make it easier for non-Muslim minorities from neighboring countries to gain Indian citizenship.
Opponents of the new law say that it's sectarian and undermines India's secular constitution.
What started as a movement around the question of discriminatory citizenship laws and laws to determine citizenship has now spawned into a larger question of what does it mean to be a citizen also. COVID-19 came literally in the middle of that, right? Of course, for public health reasons, all of these mass mobilizations and protests and civic spaces had to sort of, dismantle themselves and go back and retreat. And we were constantly being told that social distancing is the way in which you can defeat COVID-19. What we kept feeling was that the word social distancing has a way of also sort of justifying a retreat into the domestic and a retreat away from political spaces. And we didn't want to let that happen. You maintain physical distance from each other, but solidarities need to be kept alive, especially when the country was anyway going through a moment where these solidarities were being forged. We can't let a pandemic disrupt that. We just have to sort of be unique in our strategies. And Radio Quarantine was also born as a response to that.
হাটবাজারে চৈত্র সেলের শোরগোলে নয়, নতুন বছর এলো স্রেফ ক্যালেন্ডারে। পাড়ার মুদি দোকানে হালখাতা এবার নেই, আছে থমকে যাওয়া অর্থনীতি, বিষণ্ণ মুখ আছে, আছে অভাব।
In the 80s in India, growing up in Calcutta, there were only 2 TV channels, So radio used to be a very much a part and parcel of our lives, and every household would have at least 1 or 2 people who would just keep their radios on as long as they were, up and awake. So that was obviously something that we grew up with. Although right now we have so many TV channels in India, most of them, which are the private TV channels as well as the government TV channels, are all spreading the same kind of propaganda news, which is very favorable to the fascist regime that we have at the center. So at that point of time, what do? Like you are a bunch of citizens who want to push the narrative the other way around. You want to tell about most people of India, including people like you and me, and also the ones who are much, much less fortunate, What possibly could we have done? So radio is one of the mediums that really comes to your rescue at this point of time.
The other motivations for having this in the radio format was because we also sense that radio is something that's intimate. We have people requesting for songs on our midnight music slot. And if you think about it, this requesting for songs business is quite weird in the day of YouTube and Spotify, right? But when you request for the same song to be played, you're doing it because you want somebody to acknowledge that you're there, you're probably alone in your house, and you're listening to something, and you feel recognized.
বন্ধুরা শুনছেন রেডিও কোয়ারেন্টাইন কলকাতা। একাকী থেকো না অসময়। আমি সুমিত, আমার সঙ্গে শুনছেন যদিও আমরা ঘরবন্দি, মনের জানালা বড়। আর আমি এই মুহূর্তে কথা বলছি এনআইটি রাউরকেল্লার ফিজিক্সের অধ্যাপক সঞ্জয় দত্তের সঙ্গে।
Most Bengali thing about Radio Quarantine is the fact that it's entirely in Bengali, and we don't really care about even writing our schedule out in English. Most of us who are involved with the programming of Radio Quarantine are based out of Calcutta. And I think there is something that happens when you're experiencing trauma of the sort that is COVID-19. This is a global trauma that the entire world is going through. You sort of sink in and you try to seek out the familiar. I think that's been definitely one motivation behind having it entirely in Bengali, that to reach out to a closer, more intimate audience, but in ways that everybody in that audience understands. I don't know, Kosturi, I've actually not really thought about why we decided to do it entirely in Bengali, except that it just so happened. I was like, this is
it
great.
just happens to be our mother tongue, all of us. So that's the most natural choice that came to us. So the language that we would speak, if we were able to step out of our homes, to our neighbors, to the next door guy, that's what we are missing. That is the primary language, although we do not have any restriction over other languages that people understand in this region. For example, we have had storytellings or sessions or episodes in English as well as story readings in Hindi, which are the 2 other languages that people generally understand in this region.
Hello I wish to register a complaint. Hello, miss. What do you mean, miss? Oh, I'm sorry, I have a cold.
Willkommen, damas y caballeras y personas no binarias. This is episode 7 of Songs of Comfort for Hypochondriacs and Panicking Lovers on Radio Quarantine/Quarantine. Tonight is the third and final volume of Tasteful Tunes for Missing Objects. We begin with a song about restaurants for all of you who are missing going out and eating with friends. So this is Arlo Guthrie with Alice's Restaurant.
One thing that's emerged from our experience with Radio Quarantine is that there's an obvious gap for this kind of programming. There's an obvious gap for community-generated programming, which is in Bengali, which speaks about topical issues, also decides to have a little bit of fun with music and poetry and literature, and programming which feels intimate. It feels like something that you can also be part of if you wanted to. And whether it's in the form of Radio Quarantine or whether it's in some other form, this gap needs to be filled for sure.
अरे मसीहा जैसा आता है, अरे मसीहा जैसा आता है, सज धज के, अरे जान निकल जाता हमारा, अरे जान निकल जाता हमारा.
Rambles, gambols, and perambulations.
At the start of this crisis, we met Mert Erogul, an emergency room doctor at a Brooklyn hospital that's been completely overcome by corona. Last weekend, Dr. Erogul stepped out of the ER and headed to a repurposed nursing home to tend to COVID patients on the mend. The change of scenery came with a change of tone, but the underlying condition remained the same. Here's Mert.
Hi, my name is Mert Erogul. I'm an emergency doctor in Brooklyn, and I've been treating COVID patients for a month now. On Easter Sunday, I worked at a nursing home that has been repurposed into a kind of overflow COVID hospital for people who are too sick to go home, but not quite sick enough to be in the hospital. For weeks, I've been admitting sick patients to the hospital, unsure whether they were going to make it. So it was fitting to spend this sort of Easter holiday of rebirth on the other side of this illness. The nursing home is quiet and nothing's beeping and nobody's in a hurry. Everything feels so slow. It's like we're treating them with time itself. Patients are, lying in bed. Some of them are watching TV, others are just staring at the ceiling, we're just waiting for the disease to go away. And when you come in to see them, they just sort of nod at you, or maybe not, and nobody seems to have a lot of energy for anything. And the mood among the patients is not one of, real optimism. I'm so excited to leave, but more weariness. Everybody's just worn out. There was a young guy who was sick for a month and he'd lost 30 pounds. And he had become emotional because his appetite had returned and he was dreaming of food and all we could talk about was food. And he was so excited to have a beer again. There was an older couple that had both gotten very sick and miraculously both of them had beaten the odds and managed to survive. And I thought it'd be great to put them in the same room, but the nurses weren't able to do that. And the woman said that she could wait. They'd been married for 46 years and another day without him isn't going to make a difference. And the man had a completely different perspective. He said, no, I can't wait. I've been married to this woman for 46 years, and we've never been apart for so long. In 2 different rooms on that floor, a father and a daughter were also being treated for the disease. The father knew, but the daughter didn't know that the mother had died. And this was something that was known to all the staff, and nobody really knew how to deal with it. It was almost like there was grief sort of hovering over her hospital bed that, hadn't quite settled yet. And we sort of informally decided to respect the father's wishes in this matter. There was a woman who had been intubated and was one of the lucky ones to survive, but it had affected her voice and she could barely talk. And I wandered into her room when she was trying to call her human resources department to let them know that she'd been out sick, but she was hoarse and diminished and couldn't quite make her case. She kept repeating herself, and so I picked up the phone because I could sort of be her voice for her, and I told the human resources people to excuse her for the few weeks that she'd been out, and they were very understanding. There was an old Ukrainian woman, and she was getting better, but she wasn't quite ready to go home. She lived with her older husband, and he hadn't gotten sick yet. So I told her, you can't go home because you're going to infect your husband. And at first she said, oh, he's fine. He's very strong. And then I said, well, listen, you have to go somewhere for 2 more weeks, or maybe send him somewhere. Isn't there a child, one of your kids, maybe you could go to their home. And she said that, my kids are in Ukraine. I don't have anybody else. I'm just with him, and if we die, we die. The COVID hospital was staffed by people from all over the country. There was a doctor with me who came from Vermont to help. She had also been to West Africa to treat Ebola. There was a physician assistant from Philadelphia. There were nurse practitioners from Seattle and Colorado who'd come all the way to Brooklyn just to contribute. In our own hospital emergency room, some of the residents who graduated from our training program and sort of spread out all across the country have returned. Nobody's doing it for the applause. They just see that there's a problem and they feel like they can help. And in a way, they're the same people who would otherwise be making masks or sending food or applauding or banging pots in the streets, every evening, which, by the way, is just such a lovely gesture. And this is the lesson of the pandemic for me, and this is the memory that I'll have and will choose to hold on to for the rest of my life, that there are good people everywhere, and despite everything, we can afford to have faith in each other in these difficult times and this new world, that we're all going to have to contend with.
Healthcare is not created equally, and in countries where the systems of care are already overburdened, a viral outbreak can mean total disruption. And facing the added influx of a stream of deportees constantly arriving from the United States, a team of doctors, scientists, and community health workers in Haiti jumped into immediate action. Here's Mark.
Hi, my name is Mark Chalmers. I work for Partners in Health, Sami La Santé in Haiti. I am currently at one of our sites in Haiti in the Central Plateau. I am at the University Hospital in Mirbalais, or Hôpital Université de Mirbalais. It is a 300-bed teaching hospital that we started in 2013. I can say that this pandemic has had a profound effect on our country, as in many places. We now have 41 cases in our country, which is relatively small in comparison to other places. The country has put in some measures in order to protect the population. The country has imposed a curfew. We encourage social distancing. They have required that the population wear masks. This has changed our way of living, as in other places. From the time that we heard about COVID-19 pandemic, we started mobilizing our team, started training on PPE and what the disease cases and how best we can get ahead of this. Our team started working immediately with our network on writing policies and protocol on how to address the care of patients and how to best provide community outreach to start teaching the population about what COVID-19 is, what are prevention methods, how can you protect your family and those members around you. And we started working with other members of our community to make more masks, seeing if we could get locally sourced materials so that we can have some protective materials for patients and our staff at the hospital. We have mobilized the best way that we can in order to best combat COVID-19, or at least to get ahead of it if it is possible. It is inconceivable for us to do everything on our part to limit the exposure of COVID-19 into the community by going to the borders and testing people, identifying early cases, and to come in early. At the same time, we're receiving deportees from the United States, which is a country that has widespread COVID-19. We're receiving deportees into this country that have the potential to be either pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic at this point to come into the country and expose others. In a place where we already have compromised health system, that we are having already overburdened health system, to add more to that is something that many of us do not understand why at this point needs to continue, why at this point the deportations need to happen when we do not have a containment of this global pandemic. We all know that we all have a new reality right now, and we are all doing the best that we can as a community, as individuals, to limit the spread, to educate as much as we can, to protect ourselves as healthcare workers. Our expectation, our hope would be that the governments would be doing the same thing to protect the healthcare workers, to protect the population, and to really stop the deportations at this point so that we're not adding more burden to a system that is already overburdened.
There are roughly 3 New Yorks. There is, first, the New York of the man or woman who was born there, who takes the city for granted and accepts its size, its turbulence as natural and inevitable. Second, there is the New York of the commuter, the city that is devoured by locusts each day and spat out each night. Third, there is New York of the person who was born somewhere else and came to New York in quest of something. Of these 3 trembling cities, the greatest is the last, the city of final destination, the city that is a goal. It is this 3rd city that accounts for New York's high-strung disposition, its poetical deportment, its dedication to the arts, and its incomparable achievements. Commuters give the city its tidal restlessness, natives give it solidity and continuity, but the settlers give it passion. And whether it is a farmer arriving from Italy to set up a small grocery store in a slum, or a young girl arriving from a small town in Mississippi to escape the indignity of being observed by her neighbors, or a boy arriving from the Corn Belt with nothing but a manuscript in a suitcase and a pain in his heart, it makes no difference. Each embraces New York with the intense excitement of first love. Each absorbs New York with the fresh eyes of an adventurer. Each generates heat and light to dwarf the consolidated Edison Company. My name is Hani Fiesti, and this has been an excerpt of E.B. White's Here is New York.
Hi BRIC Radio, my name is Sriyanka Ray.
Hi, my name is Bridget Nazimoli.
My name is Lucia Kabuba.
My name is Shirin and I'm from Iran.
Santiago.
Mayumi Sato.
And I'm from Argentina.
My name is Billy Clapes.
Hi, Peter Clapes here.
I'm original from Sparta, Greece. And the last 64 years. I live in Brookline, Massachusetts.
I just moved to Texas from Boston.
I'm currently sitting in my home in Kolkata.
Now, I'm in Florida with my daughter's family.
We're just trying to settle in and get used to the way of things down here, and then the coronavirus happened. Originally, I'm from Uganda, that's East Africa. The term social distancing, in my primary language, it's called Okweyaula. That technically translates into you separating yourself from other people or trying to isolate.
Social distancing means distanciamiento social en español.
対人距離の確保 securing the personal distance.
My first language is Bengali, it's my mother tongue. Social distancing loosely translates to Shamajik Duri.
I heard some people also call it pausa social and recreo social because of the bad connotations that distancing may have.
In the art of Greece, we say grazie apostasy. In another part, they say keep your distance, μην έρχεσαι κοντά μου, μην με πλησιάζεις.
Menomispiti, which essentially translates in English to we stay at home or we remain at home.
We have a lot of different ways to express our feelings.
I guess it can also have a sort of emotional connotation as well. Duri being the distance in between people, distance between hearts, distance between spirits. But I would say, in the news channels and when people are speaking, people aren't really using the Bengali term because, there isn't exactly a specific, proper, literal translation of social distancing in Bengali.
There's not really a direct equivalent of words such as social distancing in Persian, which is my native language. I've seen a bunch of people in Iran use the term judasazi, which simply means separation.
There's not really a word for social distancing in Swahili, but more of an act.
Most recently, I've also been hearing folks say durio dusi, which basically means friendship from afar or faraway friendship, which is catchy and kind of has a nice ring to it, but could also have a somewhat negative connotation, meaning keeping someone at an arm's length.
Kubakia mbali kwa watu wengine na kubakia kwa nyumba kwa juu hapendi wakuambukizie au waambukize. What I just said was to stay away from others and staying at home so you don't infect others or they infect you.
It's been really difficult, I want to say, because as Ugandans, we are very social people. We like to hang around and hang out, and we have very, extended families, and we're always visiting people, visiting relatives, and for us to have to stay indoors 24/7, especially back home, that has been really very difficult and very challenging for most people.
Culturally in India, we don't really believe in space. It can be a little annoying at times, but culturally, we are the sort of people who share emotions, joy, sadness. We're always up in each other's business. There's 1.3 billion of us, so, there's literally very little space in our country. So social distancing and maintaining physical distance becomes really, really hard. We have, the biggest slums in the whole world, which is Dharavi in Mumbai. And last I heard, there are 22 positive cases of COVID-19 in the slums. So, when we talk about social distancing on a practical level, it's just really, really hard. It's actually close to impossible. There's just too many of us and too little space.
The Greek way of life it has been turned on its head. We're known for never keeping socially distant in our daily lives. We greet each other with 2 kisses.
From my family, they like to go out and, socialize. So it's been a little harder for them.
It has meant a lot of changes for all my family, for my parents, my cousins, my brothers, and none of them is allowed to go to anybody else's houses.
Personally, social distancing hasn't really been too much of a challenge per se, because I like to stay indoors and I don't like to go out too much. Of course, I miss hanging out with my friends and being outside and going to school and work, but it hasn't really been that challenging.
I live in New York and my family is in Japan, so usually I don't see them very often. But now I speak to my sister and my mother over the phone almost every other day. It's because of this pandemic situation. We just wanted checking in each other.
I call my relatives in Greece and in Boston and here in America, and we'll pray and we'll pray, not for us but for the whole world.
It's been quite challenging translating some of these COVID-related words and phrases into Persian, but I think it's okay. I think we should all translate this pandemic on our own terms, in our own words, and resist the hegemony of the English language.
I don't like to think of social distancing as being, emotionally distant from those that I love. Because just because, we're far away from each other physically doesn't mean that our spirits are far away from each other.
Hope everyone's safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I hope this will be over quite soon.
Thanks.
And I hope this sickness is getting over very soon. Okay?
Good evening, this is Hanna Min Jung Herbertson reporting live from Stockholm, Sweden. But before I get into the Swedish situation, I just want to give a shout out to BRIC. I used to be a student at BRIC, took a lot of different classes, and I used to live in Bed-Stuy. So I just want to give a lot of extra love to my Brooklyn peoples. So here in Stockholm, Sweden, it's pretty much not like everywhere else in the world. People are not in quarantine, or we're not forced or told to be in quarantine, but they are encouraging us to do it. The people that can, work from home, wash our hands, don't visit the old people, but everything's open still. It's just the colleges and universities that are closed. Like daycares are open, for example. So this soft approach to fighting the virus doesn't sit right with me. I've been self-quarantining myself for the past 4 weeks and just going outside to the woods for taking walks and grocery runs, but avoiding to take subways and buses and also seeing people. But a lot of people here don't really realize how severe it can get, I think, because people still hang out in groups and have beers at bars and, not really worrying about keeping the distance that much, which is worrying. And it's a small country. We have like 10 million people here. The death number is about 1,300. So we'll see. I'm hoping for the best, but I'm worried what will happen due to this soft approach. But yeah, we'll see. So again, a lot of love to everyone in New York. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to see you soon.
Weekend weather with Griffin. Weekend weather with Griffin. Hey everybody, it's Junior Meteorologist Grff City talking about the weekend weather. Your city, Brooklyn, New York. Day, Friday, high 52, low 45. It will be partly cloudy. Saturday, high 50, low 40. It'll be rainy in the morning. Sunday, high 63, low 48. It'll be sunny. Clouds are very important for predicting the weather all over the world, and there are 10 different types of clouds. As of this April, the International Cloud Atlas is available in the official UN languages. Check it out. Weekly fun fact. Did you know the New York bird is an eastern bluebird? And that the flower is a rose? Thank you for listening, Brooklyn!
Brooklyn, USA is produced by me, Sachar Mathias.
And me, Emily Boghossian.
And me, Shirin Barghi.
And me, Charlie Hoxie.
And me, Khyriel Palmer.
And me, Ross Tuttle.
And me, Sriyanka Ray.
And me, Mayumi Sato.
With help this week from BRIC Radio Junior Meteorologist Grff City, Taylor Cook, Lauren Germain,
Taha Ahmed,
Carla Marin Dagnu,
Inigo, Piotr,
Dana, Gabriele,
Ross Armstrong,
Sade Bansu,
Stacy Libok Meto,
Arthur,
Billy,
Winnie Gaspard,
Mark Shomas,
Leila Daya,
Judy, Hadrozain,
Susna,
Stefan Christoph,
Vajiha Nakvi,
Mariam Barghouti,
Hania,
Raquel,
Bridget Nazimoli,
Lucia Kabuba,
Santiago,
Billy Claves,
Peter Clapes,
an anonymous caller in Wuhan, an expat in Ecuador, my uncle Sid in Guyana, Bantu, and Entraña y Torenzo, who provided original music for the episode. They say it takes a village, and this one certainly did. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you to Ethan Liu, Daniel Rios, Shiji Awayinka, Anna Catalan, Ilya Schnitzer, Arthur and Jamie, Marion and John, Helen, Jessica Lander, Allison and Santi, Yonatan Rosen, Dave Mark, Jack Barrett, and Ellen Barrett for helping us reach out to the whole wide world so that we could bring it all home to Brooklyn. To hear from the rest of our friends and family abroad, stick around for part 2 of this episode, where we visit almost 30 different countries from the shelter of our place. If you want to leave us a message, check the show notes for a link to our handy guide to recording a voice memo and sending it in to the show. But if you'd rather reach out the old-fashioned way, you can always call us at 917-719-0021 and tell us your name, where you're calling from, how to reach you, and anything else you want to get off your chest. We're here when you need us, and we can't wait to hear from you. If you like what you hear, comment, like, share, and subscribe, and follow @BRICTV on Twitter and Instagram for updates. For more information on this and all BRIC Radio podcasts, visit bricartsmedia.org/radio.